Chapter 2463, Crushing Celestial Kings. Chapter 2463, Crushing Celestial Kings. Sorry, I've made everyone wait. Ling Han had already adorned a set of new robes. Through rising from the ashes, his injuries were naturally all gone, and he had recovered to a complete state. Actually, he had no need to die just now, but had an inexplicable feeling that he had to shed his old shell. Hence, he chose to execute rising from the ashes. It was very different. Ling Han only felt like his body was especially light. Great Tao had become extremely clear to him, as if he himself was Tao, part of heaven and earth itself. If he had to attack anyone, he could just directly grab a streak of Great Tao and throw it over, slice it over, or slash it over, and nothing could not be destroyed. As for defense, he could immerse himself in Great Tao, and no matter how powerful one's attacks were, he himself was Great Tao, so what could one do to him? Of course, this was only a misconception. Every celestial king had this kind of ability, and it would have to depend on whoever had a greater and more powerful grasp of Great Tao. However, it should be known that Ling Han was still not a celestial king yet. Damn it, he's broken through, a celestial king exclaimed through gritted teeth. That's not right. Yu Wudi's eyes suddenly widened. There are no unusual scenes of the heaven and earth appearing. When a celestial king achieved Tao, there would be a reaction from the heaven and earth. There would be countless auspicious clouds and a fragrance that spread everywhere. But all of this had not appeared. His heavenly tribulation is unusual, so it is also possible that the reaction from the heaven and earth would be unusual as well. Ian, this boy is strange, and we should not use usual logic for him. Or so the other celestial kings said. Ling Han had to have broken through to the celestial king tier. Otherwise, how could he possibly exude the aura of a celestial king? Moreover, if he had not broken through, why would a heavenly tribulation have descended previously? Did you think that the heavenly tribulation was like an uncle that could be invited to come at any time? They all shook their heads. Ling Han had broken through to the celestial king tier, so his battle prowess had naturally soared. Even if the 6 of them joined forces, it would be very difficult. No, it should be that they would no longer be able to stop him. This brat had already been so powerful as a pseudo-celestial king, and now that he had become a celestial king, he would be even more frightening than before. Ling Han set his eyes on the 6 great celestial kings, revealing an intense killing intent. Are you all ready to die? You have but broken through to the celestial king tier. What is there to be so proud about? One of the celestial kings shouted at Ling Han. Xiao, Ling Han darted out. A terrifying power surged, and he arrived in front of that celestial king in an instant. His left hand gripped a streak of Great Tao, entwined it around his fist, and shot out a punch. This punch was extremely and extraordinarily fast. That celestial king was not to be trifled with, either, naturally, and had already made his own preparations. It was naturally impossible that he would be hit so easily. Immediately, with a furious roar, the sound turned into waves. He, too, grabbed hold of a streak of Great Tao and countered Ling Han's attack. Peng! With this blow, that celestial king was instantly sent flying, his body glowing with light. This was not a sign that he was about to unleash his power, but rather that his body had split apart, and this had led to celestial light seeping out of it. When the other celestial kings saw this, they were all stunned, and even Yu Wudi's eyes dilated in shock. Though Ling Han had killed a celestial king before, some of the credit was owed to it being a sneak attack and the fact that the latter had been caught off guard. But this was different. Ling Han's attack had come head-on in a frontal confrontation, bold and straightforward. Furthermore, he had not depended on the might of the celestial tool, either. He had been able to beat a celestial king to the point his body cracked apart with a single punch. Though the victim had not died, and it could not compare to complete destruction, it was still extremely terrifying. How could his battle prowess be so strong? Ling Han was very pleased. Flexing his arms, he felt like he could understand his power clearly. His blood was blazing, and there was an indescribable comfortable feeling about it. At present, he was only short of turning the celestial seed mark into a true celestial seed away from becoming a celestial king, but because he felt that his celestial seed mark could be further completed, he had not rushed to complete the breakthrough. By now, his vitality index was roughly around 5,600 points, which was enough to crush the majority of First Heaven Celestial Kings. Furthermore, Ling Han guessed that once he truly broke through, his vitality index would reach around 6,800, 6,900, or even close to 7,000 points. "I'll take your head first." Ling Han charged over, waving the divine demon sword in hand. He was going to chop off the head of that wounded Celestial King. "Help me," that Celestial King hurriedly shouted, his tone panicked. He had never encountered this kind of crisis. They were clearly both First Heaven Celestial Kings, yet he could not even withstand a single blow. If he knew that Ling Han was actually still a pseudo-celestial king, he would probably spit out a mouthful of blood. Yu Wudi and the others hurriedly moved to assist him. They still felt a sliver of hope, and wanted to again try the might of their combined forces to see if they could suppress Ling Han together. But they immediately knew what despair was, and what incomparable battle prowess was. Ling Han could not be stopped at all. His left hand controlled regulations, and extremely frightening streaks of great Tao descended down on them. Meanwhile, his right hand was waving the divine demon sword, slicing with all kinds of regulations, including time and space. Yu Wudi was mad with jealousy. He was a monarch star, and he should possess battle prowess superior to the peak stage of the First Heaven Celestial King tier upon his breakthrough, and after he stabilized his cultivation level, he should even be able to battle a Second Heaven Celestial King. But now, when he had been undergoing a heavenly tribulation, he was disturbed by Ling Han. Even if he had stabilized his cultivation level, his present battle prowess was only at the peak stage of the First Heaven, which did not match his status as a monarch star at all. More importantly, when Ling Han had undergone a heavenly tribulation, he, too, had been disturbed, but his battle prowess had reached the peak stage of the First Heaven steadily, and after it was stabilized, it would be an easy matter for him to match a Second Heaven Celestial King. So how could Yu Wudi not be jealous? Ling Han aggressively attacked that wounded Celestial King. After landing 3 punches, that Celestial King could no longer fight back, and with a swipe of Ling Han's sword, his head was removed from his body, flying high into the air. Suddenly, the heaven and earth shared grief, and a rain of blood descended. Ling Han's hand held the divine demon sword, his expression aloof and cold. Yu Wudi and the other great celestial kings were all astounded. The 5 of them had worked together to stop him, yet Ling Han was still able to kill that celestial king easily. What did that mean? If Ling Han was going to target them, it would also be difficult for them to escape unscathed. The moment this kind of thought rose, they all broke out in a cold sweat. No one desired it, especially when they were celestial kings. They were noble and highly placed, like they themselves were the heaven and earth. They exchanged looks, and suddenly all of them turned around and fled. They no longer wanted the secrets that Ling Han possessed. The freakish nature of this boy was indescribable, so it was best that they did not have any designs on him. "How can there be such a good thing?" Ling Han asked coldly. Stretching out his left hand, the great Tao of space was grasped in his hand, and surged towards the 5 great celestial kings. Ensnare. Instantly, the bodies of the 5 great celestial kings stiffened, and they could not advance the slightest inch further. But Yu Wudi roared loudly, and the violet divine staff unleashed its might. He could not be stopped, and immediately escaped from the restraint. However, he did not have any intention of bothering with the others at all. Instead, he immediately ran, brandishing his staff. Yu Wudi. The 4 great celestial kings roared in fury, but Yu Wudi only acted as if he had not heard them, and ran even faster. Ling Han thought for a moment, and did not give chase. Yu Wudi could run, but he couldn't hide. However, he would leave the celestial path soon after, so it was best that he first dealt with these 4 celestial kings. Die. Ling Han waved the divine demon sword, sword chi dancing and dazzling the skies. Fight it out with him. The 4 celestial kings all released powerful attacks, their vitality soaring. They had temporarily escaped the constraints, and their battle prowess actually soared even further. This was an incredible spike in battle prowess that they had paid a very exorbitant price for, but it definitely could not be maintained for long. Furthermore, there would be very strong sequelae too. Ling Han was unconcerned. He had a grasp of great Tao, and various regulations of the great Tao were channeled by his will. The divine demon sword itself was glowing as seal after seal took form. This was his forging of the divine demon sword so that it would become a true celestial tool. Chapter 2464, The Final Stop. Chapter 2464, The Final Stop. One person was facing off against 4 great celestial kings, and he actually still had the leisure to forge his celestial tool. No one would believe this even if they heard about it. What kind of celestial kings were these? Weren't they a little too weak? But that was the truth. In just over a dozen moves, the forehead of one of the celestial kings had been pierced, his mind destroyed, and his blood essence absorbed fully by the divine demon sword. He himself had become a corpse. Ling Han's might could not be blocked. The remaining 3 great celestial kings were all shocked. There were indeed differences in strength among celestial kings, but there should be completely no problem if a celestial king wanted to flee, unless there was a suppression factor of around 3 heavens' difference in cultivation level. Yes, in front of Ling Han, they actually didn't even have the chance to flee. If they had known this, how could they have possibly schemed against Ling Han? But it was already too late for regrets by now. Even if they were willing to beg for mercy, would Ling Han spare them? They could only pour all their power into this battle. Celestial kings naturally had their pride as well. The 3 celestial kings all burst out with their strongest techniques. At this moment, they still managed to improve their situation by a considerable extent. Anyone who could become a celestial king would naturally be a prodigy among prodigies. It was possible for only a single celestial king to emerge from 10,000 ascending origin tiers, which showed how difficult it was to become a celestial king, and once they had become a celestial king, their battle prowess was also beyond compare. The 3 great celestial kings all pushed their battle prowess to the fullest, their roars ringing out like thunder. Even if they would die, they would take Ling Han down with them. This was the pride of a celestial king. Unfortunately, their valor was only short-lived. The gap in strength was really too wide, so how could their idea possibly be realized? Ling Han aggressively suppressed them. The 3 great celestial kings died one after another in only a few hundred moves. He bathed in the celestial king blood as he calmed the killing intent in his heart, his eyes closed slightly. Yu Wudi had fled, which made Ling Han feel slight regret, but it was fine. Unless Yu Wudi was willing to stay on the celestial path for the rest of his life, he would not be able to escape death, even if he clung to his old man all day every day. Very soon, Ling Han dismissed this slight regret, and focused on the celestial seed inside his mind. Without advancing into the celestial king tier, he had already gained battle prowess above the peak stage of the first heaven. The quality of this celestial king was already indescribable. Ling Han took a deep breath, and opened his eyes once more. He headed out of the canyon. When he had left the canyon, he released 7 short and 3 long whistles. Not long after, the Empress and the others shot forth from a distance. How was it? The Empress asked. She did not care whether Ling Han had saved Yang Xianlu or otherwise, as long as Ling Han himself was fine. Ling Han nodded. This was a trap. I've killed 6 celestial kings, but Yu Wudi has escaped. Yi, something seems different about you. Hu Niu exclaimed curiously as she sniffed Ling Han continuously. Ling Han laughed. I have already formed my own celestial seed mark. Though it has not reached the pinnacle of perfection, my battle prowess has still increased countless folds. The Empress and the others all looked tempted. Though they had not seen how powerful Ling Han had been, there were already 6 celestial kings that had been killed forcefully by Ling Han. Was that not awesome enough? Niu wants to break through too. Hu Niu called out loudly. She was very envious. Ling Han nodded. You can first form the celestial seed mark, as long as the celestial seed is not allowed to sprout. You could still polish the celestial seed to further perfection at any time. Then let's just stay here for some more time. They did not return to Summoning Cloud City, but found somewhere to stay nearby as the 4 of them floated in Great Tao. Ling Han was smoothing out his celestial seed mark. Every day, enlightenment would come to him. If it were not because he would not be able to leave through the transfer formation in the heart of the celestial path unless he himself became a celestial king, he would not want to break through in the short term. They would only form their celestial seeds on the celestial path. There were a lot of celestial kings that actually only formed their celestial seed mark on the celestial path, and it was after leaving the celestial path, after tens of millions of years, or even over 100 million years before they finally broke through. But by now, Ling Han did not have any time to retreat on the path he had trodden. He could only travel towards the transfer formation in the heart of the celestial path. Thus, the requirement was that he definitely had to become a celestial king. They all had the greatest eternity everlasting physique. This was too helpful for their cultivation. Only 11 years had passed, and bewitching Maiden Ru was the first to break through, becoming the first celestial king in their group. Her vitality index soared to around 5,600 points in a single stroke, with her becoming the second strongest elite among them. Not many years later, Little Terror also broke through, becoming a celestial king tier great beast. However, though the little guy had broken through, it had also been very dangerous. The punishment of heavenly tribulation had surpassed the level of a normal celestial king, and was even close to reaching the second heaven, striking the little guy to the point that its spirit was almost destroyed. Even if Wally had modified Little Terror's genes, it had still been targeted by the heaven and earth of the celestial realm when it had been breaking through, but it was also because it had been modified that it had ultimately survived. Another 20+ years went by. Both the Empress and Hu Niu had formed a celestial seed mark which belonged uniquely to them, respectively, and their vitality index suddenly soared greatly, both reaching around 5,500 points. In this manner, their team was really completely of the celestial king tier battle prowess, and it was battle prowess that could practically crush all first heaven celestial kings at that. Let's go. They headed towards the heart of the celestial path. There was a supreme great opportunity hidden here. There was a flawless celestial seed, and there was even a way that would allow the locals to leave the celestial path. To the celestial kings here, the temptation was endless. However, it was said that this area was extremely dangerous. Previously, there had not been many who had left the celestial path through there. The majority had not even managed to cross the sea. When it was about time, they had simply retreated through the path they had come. As Ling Han and the others journeyed, they stabilized their cultivation level, and smoothened their celestial seed mark. Over 70 years later, they had arrived at the centermost area of the celestial path, which was also the last area. It was called the Holy City. It really was a city. It was incredibly large, but it had long since turned into ruins. At the innermost part of the city, there was a transference portal, and they could leave the celestial path through it. In the past, it was no issue to pass through the city. Though there were wild celestial king tier beasts roaming around the ruins, those that needed to use the transference portal would also have to be celestial kings themselves. Even if they were outmatched, it would not be difficult for them to take a detour and leave. However, the present situation was a little different. A great many complete structures had suddenly appeared among these ruins, and they had extended more than a dozen times over very quickly. These newly appeared structures were all complete, and there were also frightening restrictions on them that even third heaven celestial kings would feel wary of. In fact, there were also some plants that were extremely mysterious, and possessed an inconceivable might. It was rumored that the method to leave the celestial path that the celestial kings yearned so longingly for lay within. Thus, this place had also become a battlefield between celestial kings. Everyone was occupying territory, and advancing step by step forwards. It was said that every step had been made through bloodshed. By now, it was no longer possible for them to return the way that they had come. Hence, outsiders were only left with the path to become celestial kings here, try their hardest to charge into the heart of the ruins, and use the transference portal to leave. Ling Han and his group stopped in their tracks as they surveyed this city ahead of them. Through the eras, it had been all ruins, but now there were tall towers rising up. They were well proportioned and beautifully decorated, and were enshrouded by a mysterious halo of light which exuded an air of nobility. "Everyone, may I have a word?" A person smilingly walked out of the city. There were no walls in this city, and the majority of the structures in the vicinity had been largely destroyed. This person had actually been seated on a short wall, and only jumped down from his perch upon spotting Ling Han and his group. He was a middle-aged man, and looked amiable, wearing a broad smile on his face. "What is it?" Ling Han asked. Chapter 2465, Strange Ruins. Chapter 2465, Strange Ruins. I am Zhao Xuelong. Greetings. This person bowed the moment he came over. As the saying went, one couldn't strike a smiling person even if enraged, what more when they did not have any grudges against him. Ling Han smiled. "What is it? The four of you must want to use the transfer formation here, and return to the celestial realm, right?" Zhao Xuelong smiled slightly. His gaze was mainly focused on bewitching Maiden Ru because he discovered that only bewitching Maiden Ru's body was enshrouded with peculiar light. The other three were only pseudo-celestial kings, so she naturally was the leader of this group. He paused slightly. At present, massive changes have taken place in this place that used to be ruins. Do you see those multiple complete towers? They are covered with restrictions and possess boundless might. Even a celestial king would frown at this power. His words took a turn as he pointed to a purple vine in the distance, and said, "And there are also these plants that have suddenly appeared. They, too, are extremely frightening. Once, a celestial king had once been ensnared by them, and he was forced to dismember himself before he could finally escape. Furthermore, a great fortune has also appeared here, causing everyone to be keen and restless. Should whoever charges in completely by himself, the only possibility would be that he would be crushed into nothing by the various forces." Zhao Xuelong broke into a smile. "Thus, my suggestion to all of you is to cooperate with my master, and we will charge together into the heart of the ruins, each taking what we need." So this was a negotiator. Ling Han laughed. "Why do I feel that with our well-trained and powerful army, we can completely counter soldiers with arms, and water with an earth we're one?" Zhao Xuelong's expression darkened involuntarily. He had not thought that Ling Han would actually be so shameless. He gave a dry cough, and continued, "Sir, my words have already been said very plainly. Merely those towers and plants that have suddenly appeared are already very troublesome, what more when there are also countless celestial kings contending? You have to know the people who are calling the shots here now at present are all third heaven celestial kings." He had deliberately paused here, expressing a hidden meaning. "Did you hear that? They are all third heaven celestial kings, and how powerful and domineering are they? You are a mere pseudo-celestial king, what qualifies you to contend with them?" Ling Han was also of a mind to tease him. "It's fine. We are only passing by. I'm sure that there will be no celestial king that would make things difficult for us." "Milord. Milord." Only now did Zhao Xuelong realize that he had been mistaken. This man was the leader that made the decisions in this group. He hurriedly switched to a more respectful attitude. To be honest, in these ruins presently, those plants would release a strange luster, which would greatly weaken one's own battle prowess. However, inside those complete towers, one would be able to resist the restraints placed on one's battle prowess from the plant's light. Thus, to enter into these ruins, you would have to occupy one tower after another, and advance slowly onwards with that as your base camp. My master has already occupied 17 towers, and is approaching the end of the first area. We can be considered the number one camp. Lord and ladies, please consider it seriously. Only now did Zhao Xuelong reveal some crucial information, bringing Ling Han and the others a slight surprise. As it turned out, something like that was happening in these ruins. Please join my master's camp, and let us win the future together. Zhao Xuelong took another low bow. Ling Han looked towards the three women, and said, "Let's check out the situation first." It glowed like precious jade, and appeared very beautiful, but it was like a layer of restraints had been wrapped around them, greatly affecting their battle prowess. And with every second that passed, this layer of purple light became slightly thicker, which also caused the pressure they felt to gradually increase. They could probably unleash only 10% of their battle prowess by now, as the greater part of their power was focused on resisting this purple light. Zhao Xuelong saw this, and said, "Everyone, now do you believe that I speak the truth? What are you so proud about?" Hunyo humphed, and shot over a kick. Peng, Zhao Xuelong instantly stumbled onto the ground, his face landing solidly on dirt. He hurriedly scrambled to his feet, his eyes glaring angrily at Hunyo, But when he recalled how the aura that Hunyo emanated was far superior to himself, his anger instantly disappeared without a trace. In the end, Hu asked him to speak cheekily. He obediently led the way in front of them, and not long after, a complete tower appeared ahead of them. There were people standing guard in the surroundings, and when they saw that it was Zhao Xuelong, they relaxed slightly. "Old Zhao, you've worked hard this time, managing to recruit 4 people, 3 pseudo-celestial kings and a lady celestial king," someone called out towards Zhao Xuelong. Zhao Xuelong smiled fakely, offering a slight twitch of his lips as a response. Ling Han examined the tower carefully, and saw that there was a layer of light enshrouding all around the tower, but it was not the purple light. Instead, it was a gentle white luminance, making it seem as if it was standing alone independent from this world. They entered, and the people inside would naturally not stop them. Once they had entered, the purple light on them immediately dispersed rapidly. It really only took 1 or 2 breaths' time, and they had already recovered their full battle prowess. Ling Han and the others all nodded. No wonder the celestial kings were having trouble with every step, advancing only through occupying one tower after another along the way towards the central area. That was because they would not be able to hold on much longer by the time they reached this place if they did not do so. "Please follow me. Lord Yang should already have gotten the news, and is prepared to meet the 4 of you," Zhao Xuelong said. This was a 7-story tower. They were presently on the 1st floor, and with Zhao Xuelong leading the way, they soon arrived at the 7th floor. The moment they exited the stairs, they saw a man was seated upright and mighty, facing them. When he saw the 4 of them ascend, he did not stand, and merely nodded as he introduced himself. "I am Yang Gang." His eyes were only focused on bewitching Maiden Ru, as if Ling Han and the others did not exist at all. This was understandable. That was because only bewitching Maiden Ru was enshrouded in a peculiar light, but there was nothing unusual about Ling Han and the others. After becoming a celestial king, with the entwining of the Tao of heaven and earth, a streak of strange light would manifest. This was the most obvious sign of a celestial king. Hence, Yang Gang could tell with a single look that Ling Han, the Empress, and Hunyo were only pseudo-celestial kings even if the aura they exuded was very strong, and was practically at the celestial king tier. Bewitching Maiden Ru immediately showed a hint of displeasure. Pointing at Ling Han, she declared, "This is my husband, and these 2 are my close sisters." Yang Gang was slightly surprised. With bewitching Maiden Ru's circumstances, she was completely capable of seeking a 3rd heaven or even stronger celestial king as her partner. Why would she lower herself to become the wife of a pseudo-celestial king? He thought for a moment, and realization dawned on him suddenly. Those that had walked here but had yet to break through to the celestial king tier were basically aiming for that rumored perfect celestial seed, and those that would have gotten wind of it definitely came from powerful backgrounds. Hence, it was logical that a celestial king would be willing to throw herself at him. Yang Gang felt jealous. Why was it that he did not have a celestial king tier partner? He felt internally displeased, and it showed through his expression as well. This is the first line of defense to enter the ruins. It decides whether our supplies would be able to be delivered in time, and is extremely important. Thus, please stand guard here with me. By then, when the path to the central zone is unblocked, the 4 of you may leave easily. Chapter 2466 Enemy Attack. Chapter 2466 Enemy Attack. Ling Han was naturally not going to agree. They had come here not merely for the sake of leaving the celestial path, but also to see for themselves that perfect celestial seed, though they no longer needed to use this celestial seed to break through to the celestial king tier. If they stood guard here, what would be left for them by the time the path to the central zone was cleared? Furthermore, with such bizarre events taking place here, Ling Han was sure that a perfect celestial seed was definitely not the only treasure that had appeared here. Hence, he naturally had to set out to the front lines, and with his personality, there was no way that he would want to enjoy a leisurely, relaxed life at the back. "The 4 of us still plan to go to the front lines and shine," Ling Han said smilingly. Yang Gang's expression immediately darkened. "I am responsible for the daily proceedings here. What right do you have to object?" He was a king of the celestial path, and had always been accustomed to being proud. Naturally, He would not revere a so-called ninth heaven celestial king or even heavenly venerate. So what if you had a powerful background? In Yang Gang's eyes, that was only that. Ling Han shook his head. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Since Brother Yang insists, we will take our leave. He could be considered as having settled on a slight compromise. Otherwise, he would have directly conquered this tower. Yet Yang Gang was even more displeased. Who do you think you are? You are just a mere pseudo-celestial king, and you actually dare call me Brother Yang? Are you worthy of addressing me as Brother Yang? He moved menacingly, and grabbed out at Ling Han. Scram! Bewitching Maiden Ru rebuked, and also sent out a palm strike of her own. Her fair, delicate hand looked as gentle and smooth as jade, but the attack it delivered was like the waves of a stormy sea. She grasped the great Tao of time, and pressed it down on Yang Gang. Yang Gang's attack immediately slowed down at a visible rate. Involuntarily, he paled in shock. After reaching Celestial King tier, all regulations were equal, and there was no such thing as any regulation being stronger or weaker. Hence, even the regulation of time that used to be superior and powerful was no different as compared to regulations of metal, water, and others now. But when bewitching Maiden Ru pressed down with the great Tao of time, he was affected. What did that mean? Since there were no differences in status among regulations, that would depend on whose grasp of regulations was deeper and stronger. He was inferior to bewitching Maiden Ru. Impossible. Only living beings below the Celestial King tier could embark on the celestial path. In that case, even if bewitching Maiden Ru had broken through immediately upon entering into the celestial path, it would only have been around 8,000 plus years by now. Over 8,000 years, and her level in the Celestial King tier had already surpassed his own? He himself had earnestly cultivated for over an epoch in the first heaven, and finally managed to attain the peak stage of the first heaven. What gave her the right to be stronger than him immediately after her breakthrough? Yang Gang roared in fury. Boom! A Celestial King tier chi gushed out of his body. He was using his full power, and finally managed to struggle free from the chains of time that bewitching Maiden Ru had exerted on him, regaining his mobility. Bewitching Maiden Ru did not follow up on her attack. The purpose of her palm strike had only been to force Yang Gang into retreat, and this was also because Ling Han did not want to become completely hostile with him. Thus, she refrained from going to extremes in meting out punishment. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Brother Yang, are you still going to stop us? Humph, as a man, you actually have to depend on a woman to move, how shameless. Yang Gang uttered coldly, yet dared not to make another move. Bewitching Maiden Ru's strength was superior to his. If he attacked, it would merely be seeking his own humiliation. He looked at bewitching Maiden Ru. Could it be that this was the monarch tier that outsiders spoke of? Her battle prowess was too strong. The Empress's expression couldn't help but darken. This man truly had a bad mouth. They had already compromised slightly for him. Was he so determined to court death? Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Right at this moment, exclamations suddenly rang out from below, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Ling Han cast a look outside from a window of the tower, and saw that there was indeed an attack. Their numbers were not few, over 100 people, and it was 2 celestial kings leading them. The others were only in the ascending origin tier. Heh! Ling Han appeared slightly surprised. Those ascending origin tiers were one thing, but there was clearly an outsider among the 2 celestial kings. He had just broken through not too long ago, so his aura wasn't very stable yet. It was clear from first glance. To leave this place, and for the sake of the potential treasure that could have appeared in the central zone, the outsiders had also joined this war. Furthermore, they were playing the role of lackeys. Yang Gang's expression changed drastically. The enemy had actually mobilized 2 celestial kings. This indicated that they were determined to conquer this tower. Furthermore, it had not just been a few years that he had stood guard here. He had to have been thoroughly investigated, and now that the other party had mobilized 2 celestial kings, they should have complete confidence that they could take him down. Thankfully, the party on defense had an extremely strong advantage. As long as they prevented the other party from entering into the tower, The latter would have to sustain the restraints of the power of the ruins, causing their battle prowess to drop drastically. In a battle of 1 against 2, it was not definite that he would lose, either. He glanced at Ling Han and the others, and hesitated for a moment. Finally, gritting his teeth, he did not say anything. If bewitching Maiden Ru was going to attack him, he would not be able to stop her, either. Thus, he simply chose to act as if they were not there. He stood guard on the 7th floor, his celestial king divine sense reaching all corners. No matter which direction the enemy attacked from, he would still be able to react in time. Outside, the 100+ ascending origin tiers were charging towards the entrance to the 1st floor, and the 2 celestial kings had split ways. One attacked from upwards, while the other invaded from downwards, planning to charge into the structure. It was really too disadvantageous if they stayed outside. Boom, one celestial king was wrapped in ice, his battle prowess suddenly shooting countless folds upward. He had broken through Yang Gang's defense, and directly charged inside. Ling Han was surprised. Previously, this celestial king had clearly ignored the restraints of the purple light. This was illogical. Yang Gang was astonished. You people have truly gone to great expense for this, that you could bear to use even the subduing purple fruit. Under the suppression of the purple light, cultivators would not be able to unleash more than 10% of their original battle prowess, and according to the deductions of the celestial kings, this purple light was exuded by those plants, but as long as they consumed the fruits that these plants bore, they would be able to temporarily ignore the restraints of the purple light. Of course, this truly was just temporary. It lasted for a pitifully short time period. Thus, as there were effects of subduing and dispelling the restrictions of the purple light, these fruits were naturally called subduing purple fruit. But it should be known that these plants were extremely troublesome, and even celestial kings could possibly experience a great loss against them, so how difficult would it be to obtain a subduing purple fruit? These fruits definitely had to be stored up, to be consumed only when the great opportunity arose in the future, yet they had now been used here, which showed how resolute and determined the other party was to conquer this place. Yang Gang, since you already know how determined we are, leave, one of the celestial kings shouted. Yang Gang humphed. Even if I fight the 2 of you, it is not assured that I will lose. Moreover, I have already sent out a signal, and the reinforcements will arrive shortly. When he said these words, he tossed a glance purposefully at Ling Han and his group, indicating, you guys heard that too, right? The reinforcements will soon arrive, so you had better not think of any wild ideas. Those 2 celestial kings also glanced at Ling Han and his group, and when they discovered that there was another celestial king there, their eyes involuntarily narrowed. Fuck, there was an error in their intelligence. Why was there another celestial king here? Yet Ling Han waved a hand, and said smilingly, no need to bother about us, just go ahead and do whatever. We are only passing by and will not interfere. Grandmaster Ling, that outsider celestial king, called out in spite of himself. He was an emperor tier of the Eastern Celestial Realm, and the fact that he had managed to break through to the Celestial King tier itself was praiseworthy. Ordinarily, emperor tiers would need to walk the celestial path 3 times and above to be able to break through, and if they could not succeed within 3 times, unless they were willing to eternally stay on the celestial path, there would definitely be no chance that they would become celestial kings. Chapter 2467, Conquering a Base for Fun. Chapter 2467, Conquering a Base for Fun. Grandmaster Ling. The other celestial king and Yang Gang both turned to look at Ling Han. This was only a pseudo-celestial king. How was he worthy of being addressed as Grandmaster by a celestial king? The other celestial king looked towards Ling Han, and said after a slight pause, Friend Zhu, this is. There were 2 celestial kings on the other side, and their operations would possibly be affected. However, if their companion could make the celestial king on the other side betray his side, in a battle of 3 against 1, their chances of victory could not be any more assured. This outsider celestial king bore the surname of Zhu, and his name was Zhu Zishi. He chuckled, and made introductions for both sides while introducing himself as well. Grandmaster Ling, I am Zhu Zishi. This is Lu Ming, Friend Lu. Friend Lu, this is Grandmaster Ling, the youngest 5-star alchemist in the history of our Eastern Celestial Realm, and is presently also the only 5-star alchemist. Oh, so it is Grandmaster Ling. Lu Ming hurriedly bowed towards Ling Han, appearing very polite. There weren't any 5-star alchemists on the celestial path, so everyone naturally did not know how they were supposed to treat a 5-star alchemist, but for the sake of Zhu Zishi and bewitching Maiden Ru, Lu Ming was willing to see Ling Han as an equal. Of course, if he knew that Ling Han's vitality index was actually as high as 5,600 points, and his strength was far superior, this Grandmaster Ling would be even more polite and respectful. As he saw it, to lower himself to the same level was already giving Ling Han enough face. What else could he ask for? Ling Han could tell what he was thinking, and only responded with a slight smile. Friend Lu. Yang Gang frowned. If these few people cultivated relations, his situation would become worse. Though it was impossible that he would die, there was a 99% chance that he would not be able to keep this base. He hurriedly said, Grandmaster Ling, there was some neglect in my reception just now. Please bear with me. All he had to do was cause a delay. As long as he could delay until his reinforcements came, he naturally would not have any more lingering worries. Ling Han chuckled. I have already said before. We are only passing by and will not interfere. You guys just continue doing whatever you will. Since that is the case, Lu Ming immediately looked menacingly towards Yang Gang. As long as bewitching Maiden Ru did not interfere, they, 2 celestial kings, naturally had a full chance of victory. Yang Gang could also accept this result. He was sure he could delay until reinforcements came. Boom, Lu Ming was the first to move. He sent out a palm strike with his right palm, extracting the regulations of water, which turned into a colossal spear of ice, stabbing towards Yang Gang. Zhu Zishi did not stand idly, either. He, too, extracted regulations, and black flames immediately rose from the ground as gravity soared countless times in a split second. Even a celestial king would have trouble moving. Yang Gang frowned. The cooperation between them was quite good. One was responsible for restraining the target, with the regulations of gravity limiting his mobility, while the other was responsible for attacking. The ice spear was cold and menacing, capable of freezing even celestial king blood. Fortunately, Zhu Zishi was a weakness. He had the aptitude of an emperor tier, but because he had just broken through to the celestial king tier, his battle prowess was far weaker than Yang Gang's. Hence, this kind of limitation was not hard for Yang Gang to dispel. With a burst of power and a flash of gleaming silver, he aggressively charged out, and shot out a punch. A golden sword formed out of nowhere, greeting the spear of ice. Boom! The golden sword and icy spear clashed, and both immediately crumbled, turning into regulations which returned to the heaven and earth. Yang Gang was slightly weaker. After all, he had been disturbed by Zhu Zishi, and could not unleash his full battle prowess. This result was also within the expectations of the 3 great celestial kings. Hence, none of them showed any hint of shock or disappointment, and battle arose once more. The 3 great celestial kings battled fiercely. Yang Gang was constantly at a disadvantage, but he was also defending very stubbornly. Going by the look of things now, there was absolutely no problem for him to last a few or even over a dozen days. Hence, even though Yang Gang was clearly being suppressed, his expression was completely calm. It would only take around 2 days at most for the reinforcements to arrive. Hey, did you think that there would be reinforcements? Lu Ming smirked. I don't mind telling you. This time, we have mobilized a total of 6 celestial kings, and we are attacking 3 of your bases at the same time. Now, the 2 nearest bases should be waiting earnestly for reinforcements as well, so just give up. Hearing these words, Yang Gang couldn't help but look stunned. If it was really like what the other party said, the situation was really too bad. Humph, the peaceful underworld celestial king has only recruited 18 celestial kings, and has now sent out 6 of them all in one stroke. Doesn't he worry that his base would be left undefended? Yang Gang asked darkly. The more terrible his situation was, the more he could not allow himself to panic. Lu Ming laughed loudly. There is no need for Brother Yang to worry about that. The peaceful underworld celestial king was the strongest celestial king of Lu Ming's party. He was at the peak stage of the 3rd heaven, and naturally belonged to the strongest ranks on the celestial path. The strongest celestial king of the party that Yang Gang belonged to was the 9th descent celestial king, who similarly was at the peak stage of the 3rd heaven. Without this kind of cultivation level, they would not be worthy of commanding a troop of celestial kings. Yang Gang frowned deeply. What gave the peaceful underworld celestial king the right to be so daring? It should be known that they were all contending, and judging by the present situation, whoever had hold of more bases would possess a stronger say. Now that the peaceful underworld celestial king had sent out 6 celestial kings, their base naturally had to be absolutely empty. No matter what, it did not seem logical. The peaceful underworld celestial king can ally with the Crimson Snow celestial king, so how could it be that the 9th descent celestial king can't? A voice suddenly rang out from outside, and a man enshrouded in a peculiar light strode inside from the window, a calm smile adorning his face. Friend Chen. Yang Gang was immediately overjoyed. This newly arrived celestial king was named Chen Xiong, and was also of the line of the 9th descent celestial king. Of course, he was not a subordinate. Everyone had only formed a temporary alliance for the sake of contending for that treasure that would help them leave the celestial path. Chen Xiong. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed instantly. Not only had the former's arrival thrown a wrench into their plans, the words that the other party had said had also shocked him greatly. The reason why the line of the peaceful underworld celestial king had been able to send over 6 celestial kings was because they had formed an alliance with the line of the Crimson Snow celestial king, but they had never imagined that the 9th descent celestial king had also formed an alliance of mutual attack and defense with other forces. Their previous advantage was now completely gone. Ha 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 ha. Yang Gang laughed loudly. Come. Since you guys want a battle, let us battle to the fullest. Zhu Zish's eyes turned, and he said, Grandmaster Ling, we are all residents of the celestial realm, so please lend me a helping hand. The peaceful underworld celestial king only wishes to leave the celestial path, and that is the same for myself as well, so we decided to rake in some treasures while we were at it. However, we definitely have no desire for that perfect celestial seed. Thus, as long as Grandmaster Ling is willing to lend us some help, I have great confidence that I can convince the peaceful underworld celestial king to gift this celestial seed to Grandmaster Ling. Hearing his words, both Yang Gang and Chen Xiong frowned. Now, it was a battle of 2 against 2, and the number of celestial kings on both sides was equal, but if Ling Han and his group joined either side. Mainly, it was about bewitching Maiden Ru. She was a celestial king, and whichever side she joined, that side would be able to gain a complete advantage. Grandmaster Ling, we can offer such conditions as well. Yang Gang said immediately. Naturally, there was no way he could allow Zhu Zishi to pull a celestial king over to their side. Grandmaster Ling, please believe in me. Grandmaster Ling, we have greater sincerity. Both sides were stretching out an olive branch to Ling Han. Of course, they had ulterior motives. Their main purpose was to get hold of the celestial king tier battle prowess represented by bewitching Maiden Ru. Ling Han smiled and said to the Empress and the others, why don't we, too, conquer a base for fun? Chapter 2468, Little Terror Unleashes Its Might. Chapter 2468, Little Terror Unleashes Its Might. When Ling Han's words fell, both Zhu Zishi and Yang Gang immediately showed hints of anger and confusion in their expressions. You guys only have a single celestial king in your party, and it's one that has just broken through recently at that, and you actually want to conquer a base. What do you think a base is? Is it something that you can conquer just by thinking about it? Even third heaven celestial kings had experienced multiple bloody battles before finally managing to take occupation of them. Because when these towers appeared, they would be wrapped with various plants, which had great power. These needed to be cleared away before the tower could be occupied, and it was not something that could be done by one who was not a third heaven celestial king. And you guys want to take advantage of a third heaven celestial king? Isn't that just courting death? Bases could not be lost. Others might not know it, but celestial kings who had stayed here for a long time like them knew it very well. When midnight came, a mysterious light would shine from within the tower, allowing them a glimpse of supreme great Tao, with a mysterious fragrance that would advance their cultivation levels. Though this would only last for a short while, it was still equivalent to the celestial kings cultivating earnestly for several million years. And what was most important? This could help them break through, even. Moreover, the more towers occupied, the stronger this light and fragrance would be, and this was the fundamental reason that the celestial kings had gathered into alliances together. Why did they not simply choose to gather themselves all together into one group, then? To speak of nothing else, merely the joint forces of these third heaven celestial kings should be capable of sweeping aside everything else before them. It was because this mysterious light and fragrance could only be shared among a limited number of people. Even if they occupied an extremely great number, it would only boost the effects of the light and fragrance, and could not increase the number of people that it could be shared among. Hence, a single team could only have 12 to 20 celestial kings at most, or everyone would have to take turns. Under this kind of prerequisite, everyone could only split ways and battle on their own, with a third heaven celestial king gathering a great many second heaven and first heaven celestial kings under his authority as their leader. Additionally, the closer they were to the central area, the higher the grade of the towers was. Thus, only lower-tier celestial kings would be guarding the outer circles, while third heaven celestial kings would be fighting for those better towers. But the closer to the central area, the smaller the territory became, and the number of towers was definitely decreasing as well. Hence, not only would they have to battle those mysterious plants, they also had to clash with powerful competitors. The fighting was extremely cruel, and the third heaven celestial kings could not free themselves to interfere in the battles that were going on behind the lines at all. Hehe, Grandmaster Ling is really such a joker. Zhu Zishi hurriedly laughed, playing mediator. Ling Han's face bore a calm smile. Though his knowledge was limited, he definitely did not believe that celestial kings were sent out as guards just for the sake of a stepping stone or supply station, and this had even drawn the invasion of 2 other celestial kings. There had to be some other reason. Then things were simple. He only had to conquer one, and he could slowly study to find out the reason. Wasn't this place a place where power was the only rule? Weren't the towers here conquered through battle? There are indeed times that I would joke, but this clearly is not one of them. Ling Han swept an eye over, and said to Zhu Zishi, as an outsider myself, I will give you a word of advice. Join our side and become my subordinate. How about it? Zhu Zishi's expression instantly darkened. Though he had addressed Ling Han as Grandmaster, that did not mean he really respected Ling Han all that much. He had only thought that he might have a need of Ling Han's skill in alchemy in the future, and that was why he had been polite. It should be known that Zhu Zishi was a celestial king by now. To speak of nothing else, weren't the words celestial king enough? Not only did this Ling Han refuse his kindness, he actually wanted to recruit him as a lackey. Just how far would he go to humiliate him? He declared menacingly, I'm afraid I will have to disappoint Grandmaster Ling's kind offer. I have no intentions of becoming anyone's lackey. He had broken through on his first trip into the celestial path, which showed that his natural talent was still extremely high. Then, his future accomplishments would not just be limited to first heaven. In fact, he had hopes of reaching even third heaven and fourth heaven. How could he lower himself to become someone's subordinate? Ling Han sighed. This guy really thought that the former was insulting him? It should be known that even monarch tiers like Yang Xianlu and Yi had willingly become his lackeys, and their future accomplishments would be becoming a fifth heaven celestial king, at the very least. Forget it. Ling Han had only spoken on a whim himself, and had not really wanted to get someone so mediocre as subordinate. Hehe, since Grandmaster Ling is so overbearing, why don't we call a truce first, and eliminate Grandmaster Ling and his party? Yang Gang suggested. These words were directed at Lu Ming, however. Sure. Lu Ming nodded smilingly. There was only a single celestial king in Ling Han's group. If the 4 great celestial kings joined forces against them, they would be able to very quickly suppress or chase them off so as to prevent Ling Han's group from benefiting from the conflict between them. This time, Zhu Zishi did not say anything. He thought that this was what Ling Han had asked for. A 5-star Grandmaster was indeed very powerful in the celestial realm, but on the celestial path? Hehe. The 4 great celestial kings immediately turned from enemies into allies. At the very least, They were completely on the same page regarding dealing with Ling Han and his group first. Ling Han smiled and tossed Little Terror out. Go. The little guy had gotten impatient long ago and had been baring its fangs. Now that it had gotten Ling Han's permission, it immediately charged out in a flurry of its strong, broad legs, its mouth open, emanating a chilling aura. The 4 celestial kings felt a chill rise up their backs at the same time, as if their opponent was not a tiny beast that was only 2 feet tall, but an extraordinary beast of the ancient age whose killing intent soared to the heavens, as if it was a killing machine. They each made their move, wanting to stop Little Terror from coming closer. But what was Little Terror? A battle beast that the heaven and earth of the foreign realm had deliberately created to deal with the dark inverse realm. It was an existence that was even more terrifying than a war soldier. Not only was its battle prowess that of a monarch star, no questions about it being able to sweep aside all peers, its defense was also incredibly tough. In fact, it could even be compared with the physique that Ling Han had formed through cultivating the indestructible Heaven Scroll. The moment this kind of battle machine broke through to the Celestial King tier, what would it mean? Its vitality index would be as high as 4,600 points, and its defense was something that would drive even a first Heaven Celestial King to despair. Peng, 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 it directly ignored the attacks of the 4 great Celestial Kings. When they landed on it, only a series of dazzling sparks were created. They could not harm it in the slightest. Little Terror charged towards them, opened its bloody, gaping mouth, and bit at Lu Ming. Lu Ming hurriedly grabbed hold of Great Dao and whipped it outwards, yet Little Terror snapped it in half, and still determinedly directed a bite at his lower body. It could not be helped, Little Terror was too short and tiny, so it could only aim at this position. Lu Ming's face was livid. It charged out again, extremely vicious. So what if the 4 great celestial kings joined forces? They could only escape in a panic, with Little Terror hot on their tails. Ling Han nodded. Little Terror was truly a crowra that had been purposely created by a realm through a back door. It was extremely impressive, and was created for the sole purpose of battle. However, precisely because of that, it was very limited as well, as its intelligence was slightly low. Otherwise, if it could cultivate like Ling Han and the others, its battle prowess would definitely be even stronger. Ling Han could not be too discontented. This kind of Little Terror was already very powerful. As his thoughts wandered, the 4 great celestial kings were already scrambling all over the place with Little Terror pursuing them, and could no longer withstand it. Finally, they had no choice but to jump out of the window and flee. Chapter 2469 Yielding. Chapter 2469 Yielding. Ling Han did not tell Little Terror to pursue them. They had no great grudge between them, and their conflict was merely for the sake of contending for a tower, so there was no need to fight over it to death. He cast out all the subordinates of the other 2 celestial kings, and then conducted a thorough search. Yi, why does this seem like a precious tool? After a very long while, Ling Han came to a conclusion had discovered a structure that was akin to the core of a precious tool inside the tower, and a spiritual mark could be engraved on it, making it into your own. However, the spiritual mark of another was presently left here. It should belong to the 9th Descent Celestial King. Ling Han dared not be careless. Though he was very strong, he had not become a Celestial King yet, after all. A 3rd Heaven Celestial King was still too strong for him, and he cautiously touched the spiritual mark. Boom, an ancient, aged intent immediately rushed towards him, turning into a grey-robed man inside Ling Han's mind. He was just in his 20s, and looked dashingly handsome, but age and maturity that came from seeing through the world of mortals seeped from his eyes. The 9th Descent Celestial King. Ling Han smiled faintly, clasped his hands, and greeted, "Greetings, Lord 9th Descent." The 9th Descent Celestial King also smiled. "Since I have manifested in your mind, it means that you have already occupied this base." Ling Han nodded. "That's right. However, it is one matter for you to conquer this base, but a completely another matter to see if you can take possession of it," the 9th Descent Celestial King declared proudly. "Though I am only a sliver of divine sense, you are but a 1st heaven yourself, Yi. You have not advanced into the Celestial King tier." He saw how there was a celestial seed that had not taken form yet in Ling Han's mind. Its existence meant only one thing, and that was Ling Han had not broken through to the Celestial King tier yet. The 9th Descent Celestial King was extremely shocked. He could clearly feel that Ling Han's divine sense was incredibly strong, and had definitely crossed over the threshold of the Celestial King tier, but Ling Han himself had not broken through to the Celestial King tier yet. There was an extreme strangeness about this. What in the world was going on? Ling Han asked seriously, if Lord 9th Descent is willing to part with it, and disperse this sliver of divine sense on your own volition, then I would owe my lord a favor. How about it? If a pseudo-celestial king actually dared pose such a question to a third heaven celestial king, it would practically make others laugh themselves to death, but the 9th Descent Celestial King did not feel the slightest bit amused. Instead, he was seriously considering the matter. After a while, he suddenly smiled. All right, I will gift this base to you. However, I also hope that you don't invade one of my other bases next time. As he saw it, though Ling Han's present battle prowess was below his notice, he was a man of great ambition, and was not satisfied with such a small place like the Celestial Path. He wanted to obtain a great opportunity, and make his way into the Celestial Realm. In that case, just how frightening could someone who had not yet attained Celestial King tier but already possessed the battle prowess of a Celestial King be? Ling Han's future accomplishments were definitely boundless. After weighing the pros and cons, he was willing to use a base to trade for a favor from Ling Han. Xiao, this sliver of his divine sense, immediately departed, shooting towards the heart of the ruins. This Celestial King was really quite interesting, Ling Han smiled. If the 9th Descent Celestial King was not willing to yield, Ling Han would not fear a battle, either. After all, the other was only a sliver of divine sense, so just how inconceivably strong could it be? Ling Han imprinted his own divine sense on this tower. When he had left behind a sliver of divine sense, he suddenly felt that he seemed to have gained a connection with this tower, allowing him to obtain a considerable amount of information. Ling Han shockingly discovered that the Black Tower, which had been in slumber all this while, suddenly shook slightly, but immediately, no further movement could be detected. Strange. Was this the Black Tower just waking up for a short while in the midst of slumber, or was it because he had taken possession of this tower? Otherwise, this was really too coincidental. But he had only taken ownership of a tower, so why would it cause a reaction from the Black Tower? Though it was an incredibly weak reaction. Never mind for now. Ling Han spoke to the three women. Later, when midnight came, a bizarre phenomenon would occur, and if they cultivated at that time, the effects would be greatly increased. The midnight here referred to the shift of day and night of the celestial path. Hence, this kind of change would only take place once every 3 days in actuality. They were only 18 hours away from midnight, and had to wait patiently. When the time came, a streak of light shot out from the top of the tower, ignoring all the levels of obstruction, and penetrating all the way through to the first floor. At the same time, a peculiar fragrance was also wafting in the air, causing one to feel like they were about to sprout wings and fly. Ling Han and the others all extracted the light, smelling the fragrance, and suddenly felt the celestial seed in their bodies was rapidly growing. Bewitching Maiden Rue's celestial seed mark had already sprouted and grown. Thus, this was most helpful for her. Her cultivation level was rapidly increasing, and because their celestial seed marks had not formed yet, the assistance it provided for Ling Han and the others was far below the one Bewitching Maiden Rue enjoyed, though there was ultimately some help. They could only decide to immediately advance into the Celestial King tier if they wanted more. Only Little Terror did not get the slightest bit of benefit. It belonged to an alternative cultivation system. Even if Wally had done some modifications for it, it did not form any celestial seed while breaking through to the Celestial King tier, so there was naturally no way for it to benefit further. This kind of benefit did not last very long. After around 30 minutes had passed, the light suddenly disappeared, and the peculiar fragrance was also swiftly dispersing, and could no longer be smelled. "Are we going to continue charging ahead?" the Empress asked. The deeper in, the greater the benefits of this tower, but there would also be more towers, and they, too, could generate some amazing benefits. But there were only 4 of them, so what could they do even if they conquered another tower? Without adequate manpower, there was no way for them to keep it in their possession. If they were concerned for the front, they would not be able to concern themselves with the rear. No wonder the Ninth Descent Celestial King had previously sent people to recruit passers-by. After all, there were only a few people with Celestial King tier battle prowess, and they were in dire need of replenishment. Should we also recruit some helpers? Ling Han and the others decided to wait for another while longer. With their present battle prowess, they were still not strong enough to contend with Third Heaven Celestial Kings, so even if they went into the heart of the ruins, it would be completely useless as well because that was above their pay grade. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. They had obtained the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance 5 times, causing Ling Han and the others to rapidly complete their celestial seed mark. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ru was advancing strongly towards the middle stage of the first heaven. Initially, this process would take a few 100 million or even billion years, but who asked bewitching Maiden Ru to cultivate a time celestial physique? Others could only cultivate for a while, yet she could have a time extension of over 100 times. How could this be compared? Another few days later, Ling Han shockingly discovered that there were presently 5 people coming together. 5 Celestial Kings. Had the peaceful underworld Celestial King been displeased with the failure of his first invasion, and had thus sent 5 Celestial Kings in a second attempt? However, even 4 Celestial Kings working together had been driven into a tizzy by Little Terror, so what was the use of having an additional Celestial King? When these 5 people had come a bit closer, Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised, because he recognized all 5 of them. Yi, Yang Xianlu, Cheng Zixin, He Xinjue, and Fu Ju, they were all members of the alliance. Ling Han laughed, and leaped out. Brother Ling. When Yi and the others spotted Ling Han, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, filled with pleasant surprise. Come in quickly, Ling Han beckoned them inside. There were restraints of the purple light outside, which would cause a massive drop in battle prowess. Only the towers here were capable of resisting this kind of pressure. The group entered into the tower, and spoke of their respective experiences. They were all filled with danger, especially in the case of Yang Xianlu, who had been targeted and almost captured by 7 great celestial kings Yu Wudi had been part of. Brother Ling, you didn't fall for it, did you? Yang Xianlu asked. When Yu Wudi and his group had attacked him, they had spoken a few scattered words about planning to use him as a trap against Ling Han. Chapter 2470 Reunion. Chapter 2470 Reunion. It's all right. Ling Han shook his head, smiling. Brother Yang, you need not be bothered about it. Aside from Yu Wudi, I have killed all the other 6. Yang Xianlu was stunned. Even when he had broken through to the Celestial King tier, he could only escape, but Ling Han was clearly still a pseudo-celestial king, and actually said that he had killed 6 of the celestial kings. This was too exaggerated, wasn't it? In a situation when the gap between cultivation levels wasn't too wide, it was as difficult as ascending the heavens for a celestial king to kill another celestial king. But was Ling Han the type to boast excessively? Brother Ling, you are too extraordinary. The 5 great celestial kings could only be impressed. Ling Han smiled slightly. If he broke through to the Celestial King tier, his battle prowess would soar to the peak stage of the Second Heaven Celestial King tier in terms of regulations, and once the upper limit of his cultivation level was lifted in terms of body art, who knew just how strong he would be? This could only be known after he had advanced into the Celestial King tier. Speaking of the benefits this tower offered, Yi and the others were all overjoyed. It had not been very long since their breakthrough, and they were in need of stabilizing their cultivation level. This would be the perfect place for them to cultivate. We will go to the next tower, and after we conquer it and engrave a similar mark, there will be a resonance between the towers. By that time, you guys can make your way there, Ling Han said. He had just been worrying about having no one to guard the tower for him. All right. Yi and the others did not refuse. Ling Han and his group departed, setting out towards the heart of the ruins. However, they did not progress on a straight path. Because of his promise to the Ninth Descent Celestial King, Ling Han did not plan to target the territory of this Celestial King. Otherwise, that would be really going too far, and would cause this celestial king to return from the front lines just to suppress them. At present, they were still no match for a third heaven celestial king. Under the restraints of the purple light, the battle prowess of Ling Han and his group fell drastically, but there was one exception. Little Terror. It could not benefit from the peculiar light or peculiar fragrance, but the restraints here had no effect on it, either, because it belonged to a completely different cultivation system. Ahead of them, a great tree appeared. This giant tree was extremely extraordinary. Though it was only 300 meters tall, the roots that protruded from the ground were like dragons, filled with power. The roots were all purple in color, with a slight translucent look to them, as if they had been carved from purple jade. Its full crown of leaves was like a multitude of spears, exuding a menacing killing intent. And in between these leaves, there were some fruits that were as red as fire. They were subduing purple fruits. After consumption, one could resist the purple light for a short while, and the effects of subduing purple fruit were really, really great in this area. Ling Han and the others approached. No matter what, they had to prepare some subduing purple fruits for themselves. Shua, shua, shua. It was like the great tree had come to life. Its leafy crown swayed gently, and several hundred leaves instantly shot towards Ling Han and his group at an astonishing speed. These leaves were shaped like spears in the first place, and now that they were shot out, they grew with the wind, and became 9 meters long, looking like dark iron. Ling Han took a step forwards, with both hands stretched out. He casually grabbed a streak of great Tao, and turned it into a shield that stood protectively in front of himself and the 3 women. The leaves descended, and this shield formed of regulations immediately began to rapidly weaken at a visible rate, exhausting its energy at a shocking rate. Peng, the shield very quickly reached its limits, and crumbled resoundingly, but Ling Han had already grabbed another streak of great Tao, and continued to form a shield blocking in front of him. They had already come close. The Empress and the others charged out, and even Little Terror rushed over, opening its wide mouth, and bit at the dragon-like roots of the great tree. Boom, root after root darted out of the ground, and moved to ensnare the Empress and the others as if they were serpents. Every root was covered with purple seals, exuding a shocking might. Battle immediately burst out. Though the Empress and the others were very strong, this great tree was even more extraordinary. It was said that only a third heaven celestial king could destroy the plant and pluck the fruits, which showed just how strong it was. Furthermore, there was purple light seeping all over this place, restraining everyone's strength, and causing the great tree to become even harder to deal with. Thankfully, Little Terror's battle prowess was not affected. Its eerily white sharp teeth bit madly, and chewed off a considerable amount of wood shavings, so the great tree had to use the greater part of its power to deal with Little Terror instead. Actually, Ling Han's body art was not affected by the purple light, either, but the upper limit to his cultivation level had not been lifted yet, so his body art was only limited to 4,999 vitality index points, which could barely be considered to reach the Celestial King tier. In this place, there was limited room for him to perform. The present he had returned to his old habits of using regulations as his main source of battle prowess. 5 great individuals of Celestial King tier battle prowess fought against the great tree together, yet they did not gain the slightest bit of an upper hand. The great tree was really too strong, and would occasionally shoot out countless leaves, using them as arrows to inflict injury, which was difficult to defend against. Fuck, could it be that this damn tree has an endless amount of leaves? It hasn't become bald even after fighting for so long. Ling Han couldn't help but complain. Though the great tree was densely covered with leaves, shooting out several hundred of them with each attack, it should already be completely stripped bare after a few thousand times. But look, it was still lush and leafy, and did not show the slightest sign of becoming bare. After fighting for half a day, the great tree suddenly shook, and dropped a few fruits, making no further move to attack. What did that mean? Not playing any longer. Ling Han and the others stopped as well. Bewitching Maiden Ru picked Little Terror up. The little guy was still biting onto one of the tree's roots, unwilling to let go. Though there are only 4 fruits, the sincerity is enough. Ling Han picked up the fruits, and distributed one to each of them. The great tree had not been outmatched, but rather chose to yield. It should be because it did not want to waste time on them. Could it be that this tree had intelligence? Ling Han smiled at the great tree. Brother tree, many thanks. The great tree swayed, as if casting disdain on him. The four of them continued onwards. There were actually many plants here, but the majority of them had not borne fruit. Hence, Ling Han and the others had no intention of attacking them, either. They continued onwards, and after traveling for half a day, a 7-story precious tower appeared ahead of them, exuding a glimmering green light. There were people in the tower, and they all drew weapons, appearing to be on guard. Are you the subordinates of the 9th Descent Celestial King? Ling Han called out. This was diplomacy before violence, to avoid from beating on the wrong people. Those guards exchanged looks, and shook their heads at the same time. One of them brandished the weapon in his grip. All of you, please leave. They did not flip out, mainly because they had spotted a bewitching maiden Ru, who was enshrouded in a peculiar ray of light. This was the symbol of a celestial king, so it was natural that no one dared to be careless. There was definitely a celestial king standing guard here, yet he had not spoken all this while, and that was naturally because he had no wish to blow up the matter. As long as Ling Han and his group were willing to leave, he would definitely take no further action. Ling Han nodded. It's great that you aren't. I'd be sorry if I conquered another of his bases. He strode over, showing no signs of anger. Halt! Halt! Those guards all yelled, but they were not too nervous. After all, Ling Han was not a celestial king, and he was alone. What need was there to take him to heart? Seeing Ling Han approach, the guards moved at the same time, brandishing their respective weapons as they attacked Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a grin, and power surged. Peng, it was only a single punch, and those guards fell all over the ground, like the flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. He took another step, and he already entered the precious tower. Xiao, a frightening aura surged out, and a celestial king flew downwards. His gaze was set on Ling Han, revealing a hint of coldness. He did not speak, but instead directly moved to strike at Ling Han. Chapter 2471, Clash of Divine Sense. Chapter 2471, Clash of Divine Sense. When a celestial king moved, how could a non-celestial king block it? Hence, this celestial king was naturally very disdainful. A mere ascending origin tier actually dared to barge in all on his own. What could this be but an act of suicide? The celestial king's focus was mostly on bewitching maiden Ru. She was the one that could possibly become a strong opponent for him. He definitely could not allow her to enter. As long as she was restrained by the purple light, he would enjoy an absolute advantage over her. He could see the fist that Ling Han was shooting out towards him, yet it was not even worthy of increasing his notice. This was but a mere ascending origin tier. Even if he had reached the height of a pseudo-celestial king tier, so what? Given the word pseudo, there was no way his battle prowess could be considered equal to a true celestial king's. Peng! The attack landed, and a frightening clash took place. That celestial king instantly looked astounded. He was actually inferior to the other party in terms of power, and had been pushed backwards in a continuous retreat from the impact. He felt like his insides had been twisted and turned, and the discomfort was indescribable. Impossible. He looked at Ling Han in astonishment. This young man was completely motionless, his expression calm, as if punching a true celestial king back was a completely common, ordinary matter in his eyes, and it was not worthy of any excitement at all. And in this moment of his opponent's faltering, the Empress and the others had also entered the precious tower. "Who are you?" that celestial king asked, filled with surprise. How could this young man possess such astonishing battle prowess? Ling Han smiled slightly. "I am Ling Han, and this place presently belongs to our Ling Alliance now. Do you submit?" That celestial king naturally would not submit, but merely Ling Han alone was enough to suppress him, what more when the other side had a celestial king as well. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Please offer some guidance, sir." If he was forced away with just a single exchange, he would be dissatisfied, and he would not have the face to see others in the future, either. That was too cowardly. "Come on then." Ling Han crooked a finger. That celestial king took a deep breath, and spread out both hands, extracting a black broadsword formed of great Tao. It was 9 meters long, and exuded a blinding light. He looked at Ling Han, and then stabbed his sword towards him. Boom, regulations of metal surged out, and a murderous aura spread. Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He still shot out a punch. Peng, the fist landed on the black sword, and the black sword immediately crumbled, turning into pieces that danced in the air. That celestial king retreated continuously, right until he was forced to stop when he reached the wall. He looked at Ling Han in shock, waves of astonishment surging in his heart. If it was claimed that he had previously underestimated Ling Han, then he had indeed exerted his full effort this time, yet he was still no match for Ling Han. The gap in strength could not be more obvious. Thank you for the guidance. That celestial king clasped his hands towards Ling Han. Immediately, he leaped out, leaving swiftly. Merely Ling Han alone was enough to blast him to the point that he could not even fight back, so if bewitching Maiden Ru was added into the equation, there would only be one result if he kept up the battle with no move to retreat, and that would be death. He had come to fight here firstly to become stronger, and secondly for the sake of leaving this prison. How could he be willing to die here? Ling Han chuckled. This celestial king had tact. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have minded dyeing the divine demon's sword in blood again. Very quickly, he found the control post of the precious tower. He inserted his divine sense, and immediately a sliver of divine sense took human form, looking coldly upon Ling Han, his might weighing down like a mountain. A pseudo-celestial king? This figure naturally was a celestial king, and he was a third heaven celestial king at that. He was slightly surprised. The person that had conquered one of his bases was actually someone that had not even advanced into celestial king tier yet. A mere pseudo-celestial king, could it be that he did not fear that he would be destroyed by his divine sense? Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, I am Ling Han. Greetings, Lord Celestial King. You dare to covet my base, this celestial king demanded loudly, very overbearing. Ling Han sighed. It looked like this celestial king was not as amiable as Ninth Descent. He showed his fists. Lord Celestial King, since your divine sense has appeared here, doesn't that speak volumes enough? All right then, let's skip the nonsense. We should both be very busy, so just bring it on. That celestial king couldn't help but be enraged. A mere pseudo-celestial king actually dared to speak with him in this manner. However, how could someone who had attained the third heaven celestial king tier lack intelligence? He frowned slightly. You are slightly extraordinary. This celestial seed is very extraordinary. That is natural. This is a perfect celestial seed that belongs to me. Ling Han nodded, without any modesty at all. That celestial king's eyes were cold. No matter how extraordinary you are but a pseudo-celestial king still. Moreover, even if you advanced into celestial king tier, there would still be an unknown distance between the two of us. If I wish to suppress you, one move is all it will take. Ling Han laughed loudly. Dare I ask what is your title, my lord? I am Dark Frost, that celestial king declared proudly. Ling Han nodded. All right then. I will just aim for your bases subsequently. The Dark Frost celestial king almost died of fury. Just how arrogant was this brat? He exclaimed menacingly, you no longer have any future ahead of you. He moved. Though this was just a streak of divine sense, so the strength that could be unleashed was limited, this was a third heaven celestial king, after all. It was just a casual palm strike, and it had stimulated a terrifying power of regulation, which turned into countless spears of ice that blasted out madly in Ling Han's mind. Humph, are you allowed to take charge in my territory? Ling Han's divine sense also manifested his original form, blasting out towards the Dark Frost celestial king. His fists shot out in a series of punches, and those ice spears were instantly blasted into smithereens. Yee! It was only now that the Dark Frost celestial king experienced a shock. Though he was just a sliver of divine sense, and his battle prowess not even 10,000th of the battle prowess of the original, it was enough to suppress a peak stage first heaven celestial king, yet now his attack had been blocked by a pseudo-celestial king. Just how inconceivable was this? Ling Han broke into a grin. How about it? My battle prowess is not bad, right? The Dark Frost celestial king humphed. Only SOSO. If my real form was here personally, killing you would be a piece of cake. Ling Han spread out his hands. Since you say so, there is definitely no way I can allow this sliver of your divine sense to return, my lord. The Dark Frost Celestial King almost laughed in spite of himself. Though Ling Han's battle prowess was not too weak, it was completely impossible for him to be able to stop this sliver of divine sense from returning to the main body. Moreover, he had no plans to return to the main body and just simply hand over this base to Ling Han, either. Brat, your future accomplishments may be boundless, but just because of this arrogance of yours, there is no possibility that you can live that long. The Dark Frost Celestial King moved again, both hands grasping a long spear that was formed from the regulations of water as he swept it out in an attack at Ling Han. Ling Han drew up both his fists to greet this incoming attack. As long as it was not a real celestial tool, he naturally had no fear of a direct clash. Boom, boom, boom. The two fought fiercely. The Dark Frost Celestial King was much stronger. Merely a sliver of his divine sense could suppress a peak stage First Heaven Celestial King, and his vitality index had probably reached over 4,600 points, not much worse than that of Ling Han himself. But the problem here was that this was just a sliver of the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense, after all, and was considered unrooted, so just how long could he battle for? Half a day later, the Dark Frost Celestial King realized that it was not good. His battle prowess was completely exhausted. Without the presence of the main body, his battle prowess could not be replenished, but Ling Han's battle prowess was still endless. This battle between the two of them was completely unjust. He did not want to die here. Though this would not have much impact on his main body, this sliver of divine sense had still obtained a lot of information, for example, about how freakish Ling Han was. He definitely had to be killed, or would ultimately become a major problem. Xiao, his figure darted out, intending to leave Ling Han's mind. Ling Han humphed. You entered my mind without my agreement, and now you want to leave. Would it really be that easy? Chapter 2472, Offending a Third Heaven Celestial King. Chapter 2472, Offending a Third Heaven Celestial King. The Dark Frost Celestial King smirked coldly. If I wish to leave, can you detain me? He broke through aggressively, and was just about to burst out of Ling Han's mind, but just when he arrived at the boundary, he was suddenly bounced backwards. It was as if there was an invisible wall blocking his way. The Dark Frost Celestial King was not surprised that he would be blocked. This was Ling Han's mind, and everything here obeyed Ling Han's every single thought. But the problem was that he was a Third Heaven Celestial King, so how could Ling Han block him? Ling Han strode over. I have already said that if you behaved politely, you could naturally leave calmly, but you insisted on courting death, and battled me for so long. And now you actually want to leave? His mind had been tempered through the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Upon his active command, it was like a city protected by a wall of metal and a moat of boiling water to a First Heaven Celestial King. It could not be shaken. I don't believe you, Dark Frost Celestial King yelled, and rushed forwards once more. How could Ling Han allow him to do as he liked like this? Ling Han pounced, and attacked the Dark Frost Celestial King, not giving him the chance to make any move. They were both manifestations of divine sense at present, and had no such thing as vital points. Instead, their entire body was their vital point. They would be slightly wounded with every attack, and with countless attacks accumulating, the Dark Frost Celestial King's exhaustion was already so serious that it was difficult for him to even maintain this form. He swayed unsteadily, and could disperse at any moment. The Dark Frost Celestial King roared in fury. The value of this sliver of divine sense actually lay in bringing back intel. Losing it would have no effect on the battle prowess of the main body, but if a sliver of divine sense of a Third Heaven Celestial King was killed by a pseudo-celestial king, how could he bear with that? But circumstances prevailed over men. No matter how he shouted, it was useless. Just like Ling Han had previously said, if he had chosen to leave at the very beginning, with his full battle prowess, he naturally could have succeeded, but now that he was at the end of his line, he still wanted to leave. Impossible. Ling Han moved successively. Though the Dark Frost Celestial King was resisting very stubbornly, what was the point? He had finally been killed, and released a roar of defiance, but that was the only thing he could do. In the distant heart of the ruins, the dark frost celestial king suddenly stiffened, and was almost hit by a green vine that was thousands of meters long. Thankfully, there was another third heaven celestial king beside him, and moved to help him just in the nick of time, helping him to resolve this crisis. Otherwise, he would definitely be slightly injured. "Friend Dark Frost, what is wrong?" the other celestial king asked. This was presently an intense battle with their enemies, and you actually became distracted at this point in time? The Dark Frost celestial king frowned. One of my slivers of divine sense has suddenly disappeared. The other celestial king frowned as well. There is actually someone that can prevent your divine sense from even returning? The Dark Frost celestial king nodded. I can sense that this divine sense was left behind on the controls of a base in the outer circle. Could it be that a powerful celestial king has circled around behind us? The other celestial king was in slight disbelief. Though that was merely a sliver of divine sense, its battle prowess had reached the peak stage of the first heaven, and could not be destroyed by someone who was not a second heaven celestial king at least. The battles here were so intense that all the second heaven and third heaven celestial kings were the absolute main force in battle. What force would actually have the ability to deploy first heaven or second heaven celestial kings to steal towers from behind them? The battles here are more important. No matter what, we have to conquer this precious tower first, and then I will go and handle this matter, the Dark Frost celestial king said. The two great celestial kings raised their heads at the same time. There was an 18-story precious tower ahead of them. It was completely golden, and shone with a glimmering celestial light. But there was also a massive vine entwined around the precious tower. This vine was thousands of meters long, and had countless roots, which were presently battling with a great many celestial kings. Its battle prowess was extremely frightening. And in the surrounding 5,000 kilometer, there were 11 other towers that were similar, and this kind of great battle was similarly playing out at their respective locations. After Ling Han killed the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense, he naturally would not be reserved, and used a sliver of his divine sense to lay down a mark in replacement. Instantly, he could feel the first base far off in the mountains. There was an indescribable resonance. Wang, the black tower trembled slightly again. If the first time was only a coincidence, the second time definitely had a reason behind it. Why had the black tower suddenly reacted? Could it be that there was some treasure that could help the black tower recover here? It was not impossible. It was said that there was a great opportunity that had appeared here. A flawless celestial seed was only one part of it, and there was also a method that could allow the local celestial kings to leave. Added with the structures here being able to help a celestial king progress rapidly, it might be that there really was something here that could help the Black Tower recover. Something at the heavenly venerable tier. Ling Han immediately felt keen. Just what could this be? The four of them settled down here, and when midnight came, they instantly saw light wash down from the top of the tower, with a peculiar fragrance wafting everywhere. The four of them hurriedly absorbed the benefits contained within. There was really some slight difference now. The two precious towers were resonating with each other, which considerably increased the density of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Roughly estimating, it was a 20% increase. No wonder all the celestial kings wanted to conquer more structures. When the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance had disappeared, Ling Han couldn't help but feel discontented. He declared, "Looks like we have to conquer more bases." The three women all nodded, similarly filled with fighting spirit. "We'll wait for Yang Xianlu and the others to deploy some people over." Because of the apparent change, there was no need to inform them. Yi and the others should know that Ling Han and his group had conquered another base, and there was a mysterious resonance between the two, so it would definitely be no problem for them to locate this base. Ling Han and his group only had to wait patiently for a few days. True enough, a mere 2 days later, Yi, Yang Xianlu, and He Xinjue had already arrived. At present, they had as many as 10 beings with celestial king-tier battle prowess. Thus, they could be generous and leave 2 celestial kings on guard at every base. After another day's wait, and one more time of cultivation with the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance, Ling Han and his group, along with Yi, set off together. In any case, they were already enemies with the Dark Frost Celestial King, so they just advanced in a straight path. Rather than lightly offending a few Third Heaven Celestial Kings, it would be better for them to heavily offend one of them. On their way, there were a considerable number of plants that had not been cleared yet. Some were short and stubby, no more than a foot tall, while some were hundreds of meters tall, brandishing long vines, as if they were demonic creatures. This caused Ling Han and his group some trouble, but they were all Celestial Kings, after all, so they still managed to pass through without any mishaps. Close to 3 days later, they arrived in front of a small palace wrapped in green light. This palace already has an owner. Please take a detour. He only had to occupy the entrance and stand in their way, and he could ensure that he would be in a state of full battle prowess. They were both First Heaven Celestial Kings, so how could it be that he would be no match for two opponents whose battle prowess had weakened by tenfold? Yi strode over, and raised his fist. We are here to snatch territory. Let's fight then. He rushed out, and immediately unleashed his full battle prowess, his attacks harsh and powerful. However, while he was a monarch star, he had just advanced into the First Heaven, after all. Furthermore, his battle prowess had been weakened further by tenfold. He could not match this Celestial King in front of him, and could not break through his defenses at all. Little terror, go. Ling Han smiled. The deadline of 3 days was close at hand. He had no wish to waste another chance of absorbing the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Chapter 2473, Consecutive Conquests. Chapter 2473, Consecutive Conquests. Little Terror pounced out. It was not affected by the purple light here, so there was no decrease to its battle prowess. Hence, it was overwhelmingly powerful. That Celestial King paled in shock. He had never expected that this little beast's battle prowess would be so astonishing. He did not know that Little Terror was unaffected by the restraints of the purple light here, and instead wondered just how many times over would Little Terror's battle prowess be further boosted if they were fighting inside the structure. Little Terror unleashed its might. How could that Celestial King still manage to sufficiently guard the entrance? Instantly, they aggressively burst through, and brought their battle into the palace. By that point, Yi's battle prowess was fully unleashed. The powerful strength of a monarch tier surged out fiercely as he worked together with Little Terror. In a few moments, they sent that Celestial King flying out of the palace, leaving him fleeing for his life in a sorry state. Ling Han once more proficiently found the control post here. Then, releasing his own spiritual power, he took the initiative to invite the enemy in. Wang, a sliver of divine sense took form, and appeared within Ling Han's mind. It was the Dark Frost Celestial King. Hey, we meet again, Ling Han greeted. This sliver of divine sense had been left behind by Dark Frost Celestial King a very long time ago, so he did not know anything that happened afterwards. Naturally, he was very confused. What did the other party mean by again? Then he was greatly enraged. A mere pseudo-celestial king actually dared to touch his territory? Nothing but a mere pseudo-celestial king, you are truly courting death, he declared disdainfully. This reaction was completely the same as the first time. As expected of the same person having the same personality, he would react in the exact same way. Ling Han's expression was rather strange. If he swept through 10 of Dark Frost Celestial King's bases in a row, and the latter's divine sense would have this kind of reaction every single time, wouldn't it be very funny? Come battle, then. He couldn't be bothered to waste any more words. This scene had already happened once previously, so what was the point of having it acted out again? He took the initiative to charge out, stretched out his hands, and grabbed several streaks of regulations, turning them into a saber, spear, sword, and halberd, and blasting them towards Dark Frost Celestial King. A mere pseudo-celestial king actually has grasp of so many regulations, you truly are extraordinary. Dark Frost Celestial King raised a brow, appearing very surprised. Ling Han sighed. You have said these words before as well. The Dark Frost Celestial King humphed, and similarly manipulated the regulations to battle fiercely with Ling Han. His strength was extraordinary, and Ling Han was completely incapable of suppressing him. He could only exhaust his power completely first, and only then could he kill him. But after fighting for a while, the Dark Frost Celestial King could not conceal his shock once again. The battle prowess of a pseudo-celestial king can actually reach such levels. You must have obtained some supreme inheritance. His expression was completely moved. He wanted nothing more than for his main body to immediately charge over and snatch all the secrets that belonged to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. This reaction is a new one. I anticipate that you would have other different reactions the next time, when I uproot your third base. Arrogance. The Dark Frost Celestial King smirked coldly, with boundless wild waves unfurling behind him and striking out at Ling Han. Every drop of liquid had condensed the regulations of the Great Tao, and it was guaranteed that an ascending origin tier would immediately perish once hit. Ling Han was naturally unafraid. He, too, channeled the regulations of water, turning it into a colossal sword that slashed out at the mad wave. Boom, the mad wave was split apart forcefully, and Ling Han burst through aggressively, blasting the Dark Frost Celestial King. The Dark Frost Celestial King was astounded. How could it be that this brat seemed like he knew him like the back of his hand? No matter what move he used, the latter could immediately choose a tactic to deal with it. It was like he had known him for tens of billions of years, possessing a very clear, thorough understanding about him. He naturally would not know that Ling Han had already battled a very long time with his first sliver of divine sense, so he was naturally very familiar with him by now. But to him, Ling Han was completely unfamiliar, so their positions were completely unequal. The two of them fought fiercely, and the Dark Frost Celestial King gradually fell into a disadvantage. His every move was targeted by Ling Han, and no matter what he did, he could not reverse his progress into defeat. The more the Dark Frost Celestial King fought, the more stunned he was. It really seemed like Ling Han had studied him thoroughly. Whatever his reaction, Ling Han had anticipated it. He now thought back to Ling Han's previous words. Could it be that the latter really had uprooted one of his bases? No, he had to return to the main body. This brat was too freakish, and had great secrets. Who knew, maybe the value of those secrets surpassed the value of the treasure trove hidden in the heart of the ruins. When this thought arose, he immediately turned, planning to flee. He was just a sliver of divine sense, and could come and go as he pleased. Ling Han laughed. He had led the other party into this trap, so how could he possibly allow the Dark Frost Celestial King to run? He had already laid down an inescapable net around his mind. If the Dark Frost Celestial King had started to escape immediately after he had entered, Ling Han really would not have completely laid out the net yet, and could not have stopped him. But if the Dark Frost Celestial King still wanted to flee after such a long time of fighting, it was already an impossible feat. After about 100 exchanges, Ling Han shattered this sliver of divine sense, and laid down his own spiritual mark. Instantly, the Black Tower shook slightly, as expected. Coincidentally, just as he completed this action, a peculiar light shot down from above, and fragrance wafted through the air. In the heart of the ruins, the Dark Frost Celestial King stiffened again, and was almost sent flying by a vine. "Brother Dark Frost, what's wrong with you again?" The third heaven Celestial King beside him frowned. Was this ally really all that dependable? "Another of my bases have been occupied," the Dark Frost Celestial King replied, his expression dark. The Celestial King beside him was surprised. Could it be that someone was purposely targeting him? To actually uproot two of the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases in a row, was this a provocation? "After taking this precious tower down, I will definitely charge back," the Dark Frost Celestial King declared coldly, and humphed. He vented the fury he felt on that extremely powerful vine in front of him. Boom, an icy chill spread out. His battle prowess was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han and the others absorbed the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. With the resonance of three structures, the boost of the benefits was around 60%. Even if there were only 30 minutes, using time acceleration effects, their progress was still extremely shocking. Of course, Yi was not included. He did not have a physique of time. Cultivating now really had very great benefits to forming a celestial seed. Ling Han had a feeling that if he cultivated a few more 100 times like this, there would be completely no need for him to contend for that perfect celestial seed. His own celestial seed was definitely capable of becoming flawless and perfect. There may be treasures hidden here that would allow the Black Tower to recover. If I only possess the strength that I have now, it is completely inadequate in a battle against a third heaven celestial king. I have to become a celestial king. Just give me some more time. Ling Han did not want to waste time. After he had completed cultivation, he left Yi behind to guard this tower while he brought the 3 women with him, and they continued onwards, trying to conquer a new base once every 3 days. Of course, these bases would definitely all be the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases. If the Dark Frost Celestial King knew this, he would definitely fly into a rage. Just how much effort had he exerted when he had conquered these bases? Not only did he have to contend with others, clearing the plants that had nested here caused him to expend great effort. It could be said that everything had been obtained at the expense of blood. Ling Han and his group soon found the next structure. There was no need for questions. The celestial king that had guarded that other palace was here presently. 2 great celestial kings blocked the entrance, wanting to stop Ling Han and the others. This naturally was pointless effort. Very quickly, Ling Han and his group broke through their defenses. It was the same routine when he erased the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense. This celestial king was initially very arrogant, but as they fought, he would discover that the situation was turning worse, and wanted to flee. In the end, it was naturally impossible that he could succeed, and he would be forcefully destroyed by Ling Han. This time, Ling Han and his group slowed their progress, waiting for Yang Xianlu and the others to rush over from the front. They waited 11 days. When Yang Xianlu and the others arrived, Ling Han shockingly discovered that their party had actually strengthened many times over. Chapter 2474 – The Team Strengthens. Chapter 2474 – The Team Strengthens. This party not only contained Yang Xianlu and Fu Ju, there was also the Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, and Jiao Lan. Ling Han swept a glance over them, and discovered that the Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming were both still pseudo-celestial kings, but Shi Chanzi and Jiao Lan had already advanced into the celestial king tier. With their aptitude as monarch stars, the celestial king tier they attained was naturally extremely powerful. Ling Han stepped out to greet the newly arrived party, and invited everyone into the palace. After some conversation, he found out that the Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, and the others had all met one another at the borders of the ruins. They had heard of the events in the ruins, and thus planned to work together and conquer a few bases for fun. In the end, the first base they encountered was the one that was guarded by Yang Xianlu and the others. After they had talked to one another, there naturally was no way that they would be fighting each other. Haha, we now have a strong party, so let's quickly go and occupy the next territory. Ling Han laughed. Everyone nodded proudly. Even though there were still a few pseudo-celestial kings here, they all had the aptitude of monarch stars, and it was definite that they would become 9th heaven celestial kings in the future. How could they possibly take mere 3rd heaven celestial kings to heart? Even if they were outmatched at present, it would not take too much time before they would be able to catch up to them. There was no need for them to be afraid of these so-called overlords. Before setting out, Ling Han gained an understanding of everyone's battle prowess. Both the Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming, without prior agreement, also planned to harvest the essence of thousands of celestial seeds to form the path of their own unique celestial seed like him. Though they had not truly formed a celestial seed, their vitality index had broken through the great threshold of 5,000 points. One had reached as high as 5,400, while the other was even stronger, at 5,500. Apart from that, with the guidance of Ji Wuming, both Shi Chanzi and Jiao Lan had these plans as well, but their limits could be seen from this. They had very soon reached the end of their respective paths. Though they had indeed harvested the essence of several celestial seeds, the number was not very great, and there was no way that they could compare with Ji Wuming, Ling Han, and the rest. But even so, their battle prowess after breaking through to the celestial king tier was still extremely terrifying, and their vitality index had reached 6,200 points. This was the battle prowess of a 2nd heaven celestial king. The two of them naturally were the strongest in the group. Next was Ling Han, the Empress, Ji Wuming, and the rest. Their vitality index was around 5500 to 5600. There was no apparent weakness. Leaving Fu Ju behind to guard here, they set off boldly, continuing their sweeping conquest. With their present ranks, wasn't it just a piece of cake to conquer any base? The second heaven and third heaven celestial kings were all fighting fiercely in the heart of the ruins. Those guarding here were all only first heaven celestial kings, so how could they stop Ling Han and his group? Very quickly, they had conquered their fifth base. Far away in the heart of the ruins, the Dark Frost Celestial King, the other third heaven celestial king. Ling Han and the others made some adjustments here. If they were in contact with the purple light for too long, their bodies would also be greatly affected, causing them to become weary, and even their cultivation level could regress. Unexpectedly, just when they were resting here, their party grew further. Hua Furong appeared out of the blue. Like Ling Han and Ji Wuming, though she was still a pseudo-celestial king, her vitality index had soared to above 5500. The exact number was not clear, but in any case, she should be very, very strong. Ling Han nodded internally. It looked like the heavenly venerates had all broken through like this, and that was why they had their own descendants walk the same path. Though Ji Wuming did not have a heavenly venerable tier background, he had been the strongest celestial king for so many years, so he naturally had his own understanding. Thankfully, Dongfang Rui and Xian Rong had not followed Hua Furong, or Ling Han would definitely not allow the two of them to join his team. Hua Furong still looked like a little girl, but the aura she exuded was incredibly frightening. Even Ji Wuming dared not go too close to her. And she was still a pseudo-celestial king at this. If she were really to advance into the celestial king tier, just how strong would she be by then? After slightly resting, they set out once more, and easily conquered their sixth base. However, their good luck ended here. Very quickly, Ling Han discovered that he had lost connection with the first base. That sliver of divine sense of his very quickly returned, allowing him to know that a force had sent out 3 celestial kings, who defeated He Xinjue, and erased his divine sense. That force had even mobilized a second heaven celestial king, and that was why even the divine sense that Ling Han had left behind was no match for the opponent. However, it had still flown back to him, and also brought the intel back. Otherwise, he would have to wait until He Xinjue came and explained clearly face to face. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. They were attacking the rear of another force, but it was inevitable that their rear would also be attacked by others. There was nothing they could do about that. We can't just take this loss, we have to fight back, everyone shouted. Just think, which of them was the type to take losses lying down? They were all either monarch stars or monarch tiers, and there were even supreme monarch stars among them. It was usually only they that would be bullying others. We go back and fight. Ling Han nodded as well. This time, the other party definitely had to be taught pain so that they would know that their territory could not be touched. They had to establish their might with a single battle. They left one person behind to stay guard here, while the others all charged back. Of course, they did not waste the benefits that would occur once every 3 days, either. When it was almost time, they would stay around half a day in their own bases, firstly for cultivation, and secondly also to rest their bodies. After all, the purple light was quite hateful. Over a dozen days later, they arrived at the first base that belonged to them in the first place. Here, there was a second heaven celestial king on guard. He did not hide his power at all. From afar, 2 streaks of peculiar light could already be seen from the tower. This was a warning that could be no more obvious. First heaven celestial kings had best not come to court death. Under the restraints of the purple light, a first heaven celestial king couldn't even withstand a single blow from a second heaven celestial king. It was possible for it to even be an insta-kill. They might not even be able to escape. Jiulan and Shichanzi moved in unison. Only the 2 of them here had battle prowess that reached the second heaven, so it was naturally them taking charge of the offensive. They each consumed a subduing purple fruit, and they could immediately ignore the restraints of the purple light, and charge into the tower. Through an intense battle, the second heaven celestial king on guard was also chased off. This base returned once more into the possession of Ling Han and his group. Ling Han branded his own divine sense, and also announced that this place truly now returned under their ownership. Which force did that second heaven celestial king belong to? The peaceful underworld celestial king. In the past, he had already sent troops to conquer this place, yet had encountered the interference of Ling Han and his group. However, he was not willing to just give up so easily. Thus, he had sent a second heaven celestial king here. He had thought that the matter was assured, but had not expected that the strength of Ling Han and his group had also soared considerably. His subordinates hadn't even settled down properly when they were once more chased off. Should we switch targets to another celestial king? Everyone thought that they should not let the peaceful underworld celestial king off so easily. No matter what, they should at least conquer 7 or 8 of his bases as revenge. They were all uncontrollable people too. With one person taking the lead, the others did not object, either. Thus, they switched paths, and began to conquer the bases of the peaceful underworld celestial king. With how strong they were, they conquered 4 bases successively in over a dozen days, causing the peaceful underworld celestial king, who was still far away, to almost explode in fury. But the battles at the front lines were too grim. Even sending out a second heaven celestial king would cause tremendous pressure on him, so how could he possibly charge back personally? He had no choice but to suffer this loss silently. By now, Ling Han and his group had occupied 10 bases. The latter were all structures in the outer circle, and they had also discovered that the increase in number could no longer boost the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Looks like 9 bases is the limit. Next, we can only obtain the structures in the heart of the ruins, and only then could the benefits continue to increase. Chapter 2475, Forced into Retreating. Chapter 2475, Forced into Retreating. Ling Han and his group had reached an agreement. They had no intention of occupying more bases, but rather would set out towards deeper areas. We should still just focus on the Dark Frost Celestial King. Conquering 5 of the peaceful underworld Celestial King's bases in a row was merely a warning to this Celestial King that they were not to be trifled with. Since this goal had already been achieved, they naturally had to return and continue targeting the Dark Frost Celestial King. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han had times when he would be petty and hold a grudge. They switched their targets, and continued onwards. After their conquering a few more of the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases, this Celestial King finally could bear it no longer. 9 bases was just the right number to maximize the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. It was useless even if they had more than that, so though the loss of a few bases displeased the Dark Frost Celestial King, it was still within a controllable range. But after losing another few bases, the number of bases under the Dark Frost Celestial King's control became less than 9. How could this be allowed? He sent out 2 Second Heaven Celestial Kings to return and guard the bases, engaging in a fierce battle with Ling Han and his group. The battle this time was especially intense. Both sides were truly angered by the battle, but ultimately, it still ended with Ling Han and his group retreating. It could not be helped. Though Ling Han and his party also had 2 Celestial Kings with Second Heaven Celestial King tier battle prowess, their vitality index was only around 6,200, after all. Among Second Heaven Celestial Kings, this number could not be ranked in the upper tiers, and the 2 Celestial Kings under Dark Frost Celestial King's command were both middle stage or even late stage Second Heaven Celestial Kings. Added with the fact that they had the aptitude of Emperor tiers at the very least, their battle prowess far surpassed Ling Han's groups. Ling Han and his group returned back to the last base, preserving their strength, and improving their abilities while getting ready for a second attempt. If they wanted to continue onwards, firstly, Shichanzi and Jiolan would have to walk further on the level of the first heaven. If they could reach the peak stage of the first heaven, their battle prowess would probably reach the peak stage of the second heaven. This naturally was enough to emerge superior over all other second heaven celestial kings. Secondly, Ling Han, Hua Furong, and the other elites could advance into the celestial king tier. Then, their battle prowess would definitely soar directly into the late or even peak stage of the second heaven. They thus stayed patient, and earnestly cultivated in their bases. They were all working hard on increasing their strength. Ling Han, Ji Wuming, Hua Furong, and the others all set their differences apart, and conversed without any personal reservations. They thought that the celestial seed they respectively nurtured was indeed close to perfection. Even if they did not obtain that perfect celestial seed, they could still advance into the celestial king tier in their strongest state. After all, this so-called strongest was only nurtured by heaven and earth. In nature, it was indeed the strongest, but to the individual, only one that was completely suited to them uniquely was truly the strongest. After confirming several times, they decided to cultivate here, right until their celestial seed was perfect and flawless, and then they would break through into the celestial king tier. Perhaps this light and this peculiar fragrance is the perfect celestial seed. They all held this guess. They settled their hearts, and stayed patient. Very quickly, 300 years had passed, and only 1,000 years was left until the deadline of 10,000 years. The battles on the front lines had also become more intense. The celestial kings were all pouring blood. They could witness showers of blood rain from the skies, ghostly wails, and howling practically every day. Yet Ling Han and his group paid absolutely no attention to anything that happened outside. They were all earnest and working hard on cultivation. They would break through before the deadline of 10,000 years, and participate in that final great battle. But right at this time, their peace was broken. "Get out here," someone shouted from outside, the tone extremely arrogant and also very disdainful. Ling Han and his group just happened to complete a single round of absorbing the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance, and thought, who is it now that has suddenly charged onto our doorstep? Why does it sound a little familiar? They arrived at the entrance of the palace. With their pride, they would not lower themselves to blocking the entrance and battle there. 7 people had charged here in a single party, and they were led by 2 second heaven celestial kings. They were enshrouded in 2 streaks of celestial light, which was incredibly dazzling. Additionally, there were also 4 other first heaven celestial kings whose aura was also very strong. They should be at the peak stage of the first heaven, and only one of them had not advanced into the celestial king tier, and was only a pseudo-celestial king. But it was this pseudo-celestial king that surprised Ling Han and his group. Dongfang Rui. He was actually cooperating with the Dark Frost Celestial King? Ling Han. "Today will be the day of your death," Dongfang Rui declared, his expression filled with mockery. Ling Han scoffed, "Have you taken so many pills that even your brain is not working right anymore?" Dongfang Rui knew that Ling Han had a mean tongue, and naturally would not be angered. He had that level of self-control. He swept an eye over Hua Furong and the others. "Everyone, on the basis that we are all from the celestial realm, please do not interfere so we would not hurt the peace between us." His words were mainly directed towards Hua Furong. She was acclaimed as the #1 celestial, and similarly had a heavenly venerable tier background. Yet Hua Furong was very disdainful. "Dongfang Rui, you really are getting more childish with age. To actually find helpers for a battle of equals, you truly are bringing embarrassment to Lord Sealed Emotion." Dongfang Rui did not consider it as an embarrassment, but rather laughed loudly. "I have reached an agreement with Lord Dark Frost. Lord Dark Frost will help me obtain that perfect celestial seed, and in return, after leaving the celestial path, Lord Dark Frost will also obtain guidance from my father. Becoming a 9th heaven celestial king would be no problem." Hua Furong couldn't be bothered to waste words on him. With a flutter of her sleeve, she paid no further heed to him. "Ling Han, you will definitely die here today," Dongfang Rui declared menacingly. Ling Han had already become one of his internal demons. He definitely had to be gotten rid of. Shichanzi looked towards Ji Wuming. Only he and Jiolan were capable of opposing second heaven celestial kings out of all of them here. If they made no move, Ling Han could only flee. Ji Wuming nodded. "If you can kill him, go ahead. No need for mercy." At this instant, he had turned once more into the Buddha of slaughter that mercilessly lifted the blade. Dongfang Rui turned, and said to the 2 second heaven celestial kings beside him, "Please move, my lords." These two people did not dare put on airs, either. After all, he was the only son of a heavenly venerate. Previously, they did not know of the existence of heavenly venerable Tyr, but it was enough for them to know that heavenly venerable Tyr was even more awesome than ninth heaven celestial king Tyr. We will definitely not disappoint young Master Rui, the two celestial kings said, giving Dongfang Rui enough face. They strode out, approaching the palace. Shichanzi stepped out, standing in front of Ling Han, and Jiaolan, after some hesitation, also chose to stand beside Shichanzi. The two great celestial kings in front of them were naturally prepared. They did not feel it was strange for Shichanzi and Jiaolan to appear. They moved without any reservations. Boom, great Tao turned into weapons, and exuded a boundless celestial brilliance in their hands as they blasted towards Shichanzi and Jiaolan. Shichanzi and Jiaolan also went all out, battling fiercely with the two great celestial kings. However, these two great celestial kings were clearly stronger, and had also ingested the subduing purple fruit. Very quickly, they had gotten the upper hand, and were beating down on Shichanzi and Jiaolan. Though their victory was not instantaneous, they definitely would not take too long. Only half a day later, Shichanzi and Jiaolan had lost completely. The two great celestial kings arrived, forcing Ling Han and his group to have no choice but to retreat. They took separate paths, and after they had managed to throw those two second heaven celestial kings off their tails, they finally reunited at a base in front. Their peace did not last long. They had only stayed here 5 days when Dongfang Rui and the two second heaven celestial kings had charged here again. They were outmatched, and so could only flee once more. Within a bit more than a short dozen days, they were forced to run here and there, losing one base after another, causing their anger to build and build up. I am about to break through, Ling Han said. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.